Welcome into the National Defense. It's Randy Miller and Jerry Newberry. You know, we've had some great people on the show, Jerry, and it just keeps getting better.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
Bryan Cranston is on with us. Bryan, how are you?
Guys, I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, now, I know you've done a lot of press for The Upside, which, by the way, I just watched this last night. You're a funny dude.
Wow. You didn't know that?
I mean,
it's not a character that most people would say, "Wow, that's funny."
No,
he's in kind of dire straits, but thank you for that.
Yeah, and you know, Randy, he's taken some heat over this role because people, I guess, can't appreciate the humor and his situation of it. But there's some controversy about this role, actually, right, Bryan?
Well, it's interesting. We live in a very ultra-sensitive time now, and in most cases, that's good. It allows the conversation to be present. But I've kind of, through the grapevine, I mostly stay away from gossipy things. I don't go online. I don't go to chat rooms and things like that. I don't read rag magazines or anything like that. So I kind of stay blissfully ignorant to controversies unless they really have some validity to them and find their way to me. And this one is interesting. It's like, apparently, and I'm not even quite sure what the controversy is, to be honest with you. Apparently there's some people who feel that my character is a quadriplegic based on a true story about a man who had a hang gliding accident and was left without the use of his hands, arms, or legs, and is confined to a wheelchair. And how he meets a very unlikely person who becomes his caretaker, and beyond that, they become very dear and close friends, and have been, and still are, to this day. It's a beautiful story. It's an uplifting story. And so apparently the controversy that, if I understand it correctly, is that I'm an able-bodied actor who's playing a character who's confined to a wheelchair. And is that it? Is that what you heard?
Yeah.
I think the key word there is actor.
Right. Yeah, people need to lighten up a little bit. I mean, and appreciate something for what it is. I mean, if you're going to if you're making a movie and there are people who have died in it, are you going to put real corpses, real cadavers?
Right. Well, and the funny thing was, Bryan, when I first heard this, I saw the trailer and I first heard it was described as a buddy comedy. I'm thinking, what? Because first of all, who had the great idea to put you and Kevin Hart together? That's not in the natural order of things.
That is a combination, yeah.
We goof all the time. Kevin and I had really bonded on this movie, and I think he's fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And he's a funny man, but more importantly, he's a very gracious man. He offers himself up to funny situations and ridicule, but he comes on. He's very happy and open on the set, and consequently, so we have a very happy, open working situation.
Right.
And he and Nicole Kidman and myself really bonded quite well on this movie, and we had a good time doing it. And there were no bad apples, and that's a testament to him and to all of us to be able to show how appreciative we are of our opportunities and to have fun. And I hope that comes through, and people leave the theater after watching The Upside with something that I think is missing in our society a lot lately, and that's hopefulness.
Right.
Yeah.
And to feel good, and the intrinsic value of feeling good after seeing something.
And the value of friendship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really is uplifting. You mentioned Nicole Kidman. She's going to be on this show. We were talking to her folks at 42 West, and she's going to be on, I think, with Keith Urban.
Right.
Talking about. How was that experience? Had you worked with her before?
She's so well-renowned. Yeah, what's it like working with her?
She is, I just adore her. She is a woman who can and does have it all, but she's beautiful, and her spirit is alive and lovely. And we talked about children and being married and how challenging it can be because of the amount of travel that you need to do, and how you have to make arrangements no matter how long it is to make sure you see each other. And just talking about how Keith, now they live in the Midwest, and how he does his concerts and he flies home for every weekend so he can spend time with his kids and his wife. And it's like, those are the things you have to do. And without, question, we're all very lucky and very fortunate in our careers. And beyond that, you still have to say, well, how do I make this work? I've been married now. This year will be 30 years. And Robin and I try to make sure that we're not apart for longer than 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the absolute maximum. And we just make it work.
That's
because
great. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And it has to be a priority, right?
It does. It's difficult. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think about your audience too now, and I think it pales in comparison with the sacrifices and the time away from your loved ones that the armed services provide. It's just a tremendous pressure. And so, if having them pop in to see a movie that makes them feel good,
the other part of that too, and we're talking to Bryan Cranston here in the National Defense. The other part of that is what you're doing right now that we greatly appreciate, and which a lot of people don't understand if you're not in the military and you have that kind of a wait time. To hear somebody like yourself come on,
it's great that
you
appreciate it, and you're aware of the sacrifice.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, because a lot of people think, well, he's a famous actor, he's living in a different universe, but obviously you're not.
No.
Yeah, you still are a functioning human being, and listen, I wouldn't be able to have a 30-year marriage if I took a cavalier attitude toward it. It takes work, and it takes planning, and you have to schedule that time to be together and keep it nurtured, or it will die. And so we have that mutual desire to keep it going. So.
Well, and it's kind of funny too, after Breaking Bad, we didn't see you for a while, and then now all of a sudden you're in like this storm of doing everything. You're on Broadway. They've extended the network through April 28th, and I just finished your book, and that's why I say you're a funny dude. Man, you're a great writer.
Yeah, you want to talk about crazy girlfriends?
Yeah.
Because I've had a couple of those.
Me too. Yeah. When we got to, I had to tell Jerry about when we got to that part. I go, hey, he's living our life here.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Well, I wanted to write a memoir that was relatable and that didn't feel like it was for the elitist crowd. I was raised poor. My family was fractured, and I didn't see my father from the time I was 11 to the time I was 22 years old. My mother became an alcoholic. We were kicked out of our home. I had to live with my grandparents for a year. I mean, it was some challenging moments, but not as bad as other people have it. But so I wanted to write the truth and to say, this was my life, and this is how the cards were dealt to me. And it only matters with how then you handle that hand that you've been dealt. How do you deal with that? And then go on and still look for ways to improve your life and make something of yourself, to live it to the fullest.
Yeah.
Randy mentioned your versatility, and it's so notable. Your role in Malcolm in the Middle, and man, I loved you in that.
Thank you.
And then the role that I will always remember you for, if nothing else, Bryan, is when you played Dalton Trumbo.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. He was really a very heroic figure to me, for someone to stand up to our personal freedoms and rights and to try to negate the fearmongers and demagoguery that was very prevalent during those times and the Red Scare. And we need to learn those lessons.
I wanted to ask you that if because those were horrendous times, and so many people suffered. Mr. Trumbo went to prison. Do you see any parallels between what happened then and what could possibly occur today with all the seeming harsh attacks on Hollywood and the media?
Well, I suppose, but I think hopefully we've learned our lessons, and there is due process that needs to take place, and wrongdoing should be brought out into the light by anyone, and if so deemed by peers, they're found guilty, then they should be punished. But those times during Dalton Trumbo, when he was writing screenplays and thought, that he was a communist. Well, this man, he was a socialist.
Right.
He wanted social programs and things like that. And at the time, remember when he went to a communist meeting, back in those times, it was actually one of the actual options that people were investigating. The communists were our allies during World War II.
Right.
And so it was like, oh, yeah. And then a lot of people who would go to a meeting and go, no, that's not for me. But they went to the meeting. And if they went to the meeting,
they were guilty.
Whether they joined it or not, it was like, oh, my God, you are guilt by association. And so that kind of fear, it was kind of the same sensibility, not to the degree of Nazism, but the same sensibility of, I'm afraid and I don't want to be punished, so I'm going to point the finger at my neighbor who might be a Jew, who might be, whatever. It's like, oh my God. And it's just a bad human experience to turn person against person out of fear, not out of any rightful, justifiable way.
Now, there's a great story that came out of that situation, how Mr. Trumbo was able to be redeemed, if you will. And that was by another famous, very famous Hollywood actor at the time who had enough guts to stand up and do something about it. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. Kirk Douglas is who you're referring to. He was about to make the movie Spartacus, and he didn't like the script. Stanley Kubrick was the director, and they were having problems. And he said, Kirk Douglas, who was a big star, said, I'm going to go get Dalton Trumbo. And he was fought tooth and nail against the idea of doing that. And he said, no, he's the right one to do this. And you know what? It's the right thing to do. It is a social statement. I'm going to pull him out of the shadows and put his name on screen as the screenwriter and allow him to be celebrated for the person that he is, for the talent that he is, regardless of what you think about it. And it was at a great professional risk.
Yeah.
That he did so. It could have ended his career, quite frankly. But Kirk did the right thing. And he stood up for what was right as opposed to what was easy. It certainly was not the easiest option he could have taken, but he did the right thing. And I was very fortunate to meet Kurt right around the time we were doing that. And he just celebrated another birthday. He's 102, I believe, yes, I think 102. And
is he 102?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And just, it was such an honor to meet him. And I have since met Michael, and I worked with Catherine on a movie. And
lucky you.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I played her husband. Yeah.
Wow. Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, even better. It was just an honorable thing, and I expressed that to him, and he had stories, and he was still telling stories, and it was just terrific.
Right.
It was,
hey, Bryan,
it was really great.
You know, you've done a lot of press for The Upside. I bet you haven't been asked this question. Can you tell us about your USO tour?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love this USO tour. I want to do it again. You know, what was great is that there has been a lot of, well, should we say derisiveness or doubt as to whether this younger generation, early 20s into their late 20s, that they're all spoiled, that they were raised with this idea that they're entitled to life and that things should be handed to them. I found no sample of that with the Air Force and Army personnel and some Marines that we met on the base at all. I was impressed. So impressed. My wife went with me, and every stop that we made in Europe where they sent us, and we met, and we chat, we had lunch with them, we saw what they did for a living. They're patriotic, they're loyal, they're engaged, they're active, they're kind. And my wife and I went away, just every night we got back to the hotel room and went, this is just amazing. This is not at all what maybe the general feeling is of, and it's so unfair, a generalization of a whole generation.
Yeah, right on. Right on.
It's just ridiculous. And so we feel that, I'm glad you asked that question, because, and every time anybody asked me about the USO tour, I made sure that that's part of it, that it's like, no, we're in good hands. There's bright, young people who are at the helm of these things and working hard and making careful, really cogent decisions. And I felt just so much better about our future. And it was just so much fun and sharing, you know, some stories and answering questions and goofing around with the men and women. And it was a joy.
Well, you know, it's your latest work is just proof positive of what you've been able to accomplish as an artist. I mean, Malcolm in the Middle, you made me laugh like hell continuously whenever I watch this show. And I already talked about Dalton Trumbo, your role in that.
What intelligent choices. I mean, really, looking back through your career.
When you can get someone in the audience to sympathize, to empathize, to laugh, and you've even made me cry, man, you're something else, man.
Well, I thank you for that. And, you know, I'm proud of those shows and Breaking Bad and being able to play Lyndon Johnson on Broadway.
Yes. That was great.
All the way. And I'm on stage now in New York and Network. To me, it's not a big secret. I tell anybody, but I look for material that moves me. If the material moves me, I trust that it'll move an audience. Just if I can be my own barometer. I think, you know, being a kid who was raised in a lower income family that struggled, that knows paycheck to paycheck and those ways of life, I feel that I have a handle on it, and I don't really want to. It's a part of me. That's never going to shake me. I'm never going to waste resources. I just can't. I won't. And it's shaped who I am. So that when I read a project and I have an emotional experience by it, and I feel that I've invested in the characters that I've read, then I think that's the way it's going to be presented. And I'm excited about playing those types of characters.
Well, let me just tell people, when you go see The Upside, when you get make sure you're not drinking anything when you get to the part where he orders 15 hot dogs.
Because it'd be coming out your nose.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I mean, that was sensational. And then you see the 15 hot dogs. Oh my gosh.
Hey Bryan, out of all your roles, is there any one role that you come closest to in real life as a person?
Yeah, I did a silly comedy a few years ago called Why Him?
Yeah.
I first turned it down. I turned it down a couple times. And the reason I did was because, as I mentioned, I really look for characters and storylines that move me. And this storyline was simply a Midwestern dad doesn't like the boyfriend of his beloved daughter.
Randy.
I'm sitting right here.
Hey, you should sue him for taking your story.
Really? Exactly.
But, on the surface of that, it doesn't sound like, oh, I got to see that movie. It's like a little, well, yeah, that seems kind of basic. But those kind of comedies are like that. They give you a basic framework, and then through the actors, and we improv and do all kinds, and we just work and work and work on it, and do a lot of improvisation. And out of that, you have 100 hours of material, and the director cuts it down to 2 hours of a final product. And it's funny, and it works, and you still feel something. And so I thought, well, I'm the father of a daughter now who's 25, almost 26 years old, and it's like, I know what that's like.
Exactly.
And I have a Midwestern kind of sensibility to me, and okay, so I just played me.
Yeah.
I just played me, worried about my daughter being with someone who I feel is beneath her. And she could do so much better. And I meddle in that, and it's like, oh, okay, so I should just stay out of the way and let it go and just be myself during this movie.
Well, I could have played that role too, because I have a daughter who's 25 or 26. Right. You hear that, Alicia? He's not worthy of you.
But now, wait a minute, Bryan. If your real life daughter really wanted to marry James Franco, you wouldn't stand in the way, would you?
Do you want me to answer that? I love James. James is no, and I would say no. I don't want her to marry him.
He's a funny guy too.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy. He's good. And he's a hardworking guy and a very talented man.
And smart. He's got about 20 degrees.
Right.
Yeah. Let's no, that would be too volatile.
Yeah.
It's like it's funny how you just, you're a dad. You want to protect. Right. That's your job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you're one of those rare actors that if and that's a good example, the movie you were just talking about.
Right.
You see your name on it. If I see your name on it, I'm going to go see it.
You go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I mean,
thank you.
You add in Kevin Hart and Nicole Kidman.
Do you guys have a compilation of outtakes from the movie?
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
That'd be great to see.
That would be good.
And we might get a chance to see that down the line as soon as the movie is out and on its own. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that.
Well, Bryan, listen, we can't thank you enough for the time. It was just
what a pleasure.
What a pleasure to talk to you, and just really appreciate you taking the time to be on. It means a lot to a lot of people.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you. The Upside in theaters. We'll be right back here on the National Defense.
This is the National Defense.